It was just after midnight when Dr. Eleanor Hartwell chose a patient over permission, one illegal medical decision, one dying man, and one hospital that decided she was expendable. By sunrise, she had lost her career. By nightfall, armed men were hunting her. And by dawn the next day, the most elite operators in the world would risk everything to protect a quiet doctor the system tried to erase. What happens next will make you believe in quiet miracles and second chances for the forgotten. Before we begin, tell me where you are watching from. Drop your country in the comments below. If you believe no child or animal should ever face fear alone, hit subscribe now and share this story with someone who needs hope. Portland in late November felt like a city that had learned not to expect mercy. Rain fell without urgency or pause, thin and relentless, soaking through coats, shoes, and patients alike. The streets glistened under dim streetlights, reflecting blurred streaks of yellow and red that dissolved as quickly as they appeared. The air smelled of wet concrete, pine needles, and something faintly metallic, as if the city itself carried old wounds beneath the surface. At the southern edge of downtown, St. Bridget Medical Center rose from the gray like a structure built to endure rather than inspire. Its concrete walls were stained by decades of rain, ivy creeping along one side, in slow defiance of maintenance budgets. Inside, the hospital never truly slept. It only shifted rhythms. Dr. Eleanor Hartwell moved through those rhythms without drawing attention. At 52, Eleanor had the physical presence of someone shaped by years of quiet endurance. She was tall, though her shoulders carried a slight forward curve, the unconscious posture of a person accustomed to leaning over stretchers and gurneys. Her frame was slender but strong, not athletic in appearance but efficient, built for long hours rather than speed. Her hair, once dark brown, had faded to a muted ash, threaded with silver, and pulled into a low knot at the base of her neck. It was practical, unremarkable, and rarely stayed perfect for long. Her face bore the marks of time spent under fluorescent lights. Fine lines traced her eyes and mouth, not from laughter, but from focus and fatigue. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. Freckles faint across the bridge of her nose. But it was her eyes, steady gray, observant, unflinching, that defined her. They were not warm at first glance, but they were honest. They did not look away when things became difficult. Eleanor did not rush unless necessary. She moved with controlled economy, conserving energy the way seasoned professionals do, aware of exactly how much the night could still demand. The emergency department was full, not dramatically full, not the kind of chaos that made headlines, but steadily, mercilessly full. Stretchers lined the walls, patients waited longer than they should have, the kind of night where small delays accumulated into quiet suffering. Eleanor stood at the central station, reviewing patient charts on a tablet whose cracked corner had been taped over more than once. She wore navy scrubs faded from years of use, the fabric softened to the point of surrender. A black stethoscope rested around her neck, its metal scratched and dulled, familiar as a second pulse. "Room 7 needs labs redrawn," said Sarah Kim as she passed by. Sarah was 33, petite, sharp-eyed, with dyed copper hair pulled into a tight ponytail. Her movements were quick, efficient, restless. She still believed effort could fix broken systems, and it showed in the way she worked, harder, faster, louder than necessary. "I'll handle it," Eleanor said, already committing the task to memory. Sarah nodded and moved on without hesitation. She trusted Eleanor the way people trusted gravity, without needing reassurance. As Eleanor set the tablet down, her gaze drifted toward the waiting area beyond the glass doors. A man sat alone in the far corner, hunched forward, elbows pressed to his thighs. He wore an oversized green military jacket, threadbare at the cuffs, darkened with rain. His boots left wet marks on the tile beneath him. One hand pressed against his lower abdomen, knuckles pale with tension. Pain, Eleanor noted, but also restraint. She had learned to recognize that particular posture, someone trained not to complain unless absolutely necessary. "Dr. Hartwell." The voice was calm, controlled. Eleanor turned to see Dr. Nathan Crowley approaching from the trauma bay. Nathan was 38, tall, broad-shouldered, with the posture of someone accustomed to being noticed. His dark hair was carefully styled despite the late hour, his beard neatly trimmed along a strong jawline. His white coat was pristine, untouched by the disorder of the ER, and his eyes, warm amber, were always alert to who might be watching. Nathan had been brilliant as a resident, talented with his hands, articulate in meetings, and quick to understand how power flowed within institutions. He smiled easily, especially upward. "Ellie," he said, using her name as if familiarity itself implied alignment. "I heard you stepped into triage earlier." "We were short," Eleanor replied evenly. "Yes, but that's not sustainable," Nathan said. "You can't keep compensating for staffing gaps with personal overtime." She met his gaze without challenge. "Patients don't schedule emergencies." Nathan's smile tightened, subtle but unmistakable. "You know, administration is monitoring resource usage closely," he said, "especially with cases that don't generate reimbursement." His eyes flicked briefly toward the waiting area. Eleanor followed the glance. The man in the green jacket shifted, his breathing shallow, uneven. "He's been waiting too long," she said. "There are insured patients ahead of him," Nathan replied. "We have protocols." "Protocols don't feel pain," Eleanor said quietly. "People do." The space between them held, not hostile, but tense, a difference in values that neither believed could or should be reconciled. Nathan exhaled, smoothing his expression back into something palatable. "I just want you to be careful," he said. "The board is less forgiving than you think." Then he walked away. Eleanor watched him go, feeling neither anger nor fear, only the familiar weight of disappointment. She had worked with men like Nathan before, capable, ambitious, and convinced that compassion was an inefficiency. She turned back to her work, completed one last chart, then set the tablet aside. The man in the green jacket groaned softly, his hand tightening against his side. Eleanor stood. Crossing the waiting room, she took in details automatically. The man was older than he first appeared, late 50s, maybe early 60s. His face was deeply lined, not from age alone but exposure. His hair was gray, cropped short, disciplined. His hands, though dirty, bore scars that spoke of labor, perhaps service. "Sir," she said gently, kneeling to bring herself level with him, "I'm Dr. Hartwell. Can you tell me where it hurts?" He looked up sharply as if startled by being addressed at all. His eyes were pale blue, alert despite the pain. For a brief moment, something flickered there, recognition perhaps, or relief. "Lower belly," he said, voice rough. "Feels like fire." Eleanor nodded, already running possibilities through her mind. Infection, internal bleeding, something being ignored too long. She placed 2 fingers against his wrist, counting silently. The rain continued to strike the hospital windows, steady and unyielding, as if the city itself refused to soften. Eleanor did not yet know that this decision, to kneel, to listen, would dismantle the life she had carefully endured. She did not know how far the consequences would reach, or how many forces were already moving because of the man sitting in front of her. She only knew that once again, she had chosen the person over the system, and somewhere beneath the fatigue and routine, the part of her that had once refused to leave a dying soldier behind stirred awake. Eleanor Hartwell had learned to recognize the moment when a shift turned from difficult to dangerous. It was not marked by alarms or shouting, but by a subtle tightening in the chest, a quiet awareness that every decision from this point forward would carry a price. The man in the green jacket was wheeled into Trauma Bay 3 just after midnight. His name, according to the intake form, was Daniel Reed, though Eleanor immediately suspected it was an alias. Men like him rarely carried the same name for long. He was tall, once powerfully built, now thinned by illness. His face was angular, weathered, with a short gray beard that had been trimmed with care rather than neglect. Even as pain twisted his features, there was discipline in the way he held himself, a soldier's habit of control that did not disappear with age. His vitals were unstable, fever climbing, blood pressure falling. The sharp, sour smell of infection clung to him like a second skin. "Septic shock," Eleanor said quietly, already snapping on gloves. "We're out of time." Sarah Kim moved beside her without being asked, her copper hair escaping its tie as she reached for IV access. "Blood cultures are pending," Sarah said. "Standard antibiotics aren't touching it." Eleanor studied the monitor, then the man's face. Daniel Reed met her eyes, lucid for a moment despite the tremors running through him. "Doc," he rasped, Don't let them send me away." She did not ask what he meant. She had heard the fear before, dressed in different words. "I won't," she said. From the observation window, Dr. Nathan Crowley watched. He stood with his arms folded, posture relaxed, expression carefully neutral. To anyone else, he looked like a concerned colleague monitoring a complex case, but behind his eyes, calculations were already forming. He recognized the signs as well as Eleanor did. Rare infection, resistant strain, the kind that required aggressive treatment that would trigger audits, questions, scrutiny, opportunity. "Ellie," Nathan said as he stepped into the bay, his tone measured. "Pharmacy flagged the request you're about to make." Eleanor did not look at him. "Then they should prepare the medication anyway." Nathan glanced at the chart. "The drug you're thinking of is restricted. It's allocated for federal contracts and military referrals. Using it here will require administrative authorization." "He doesn't have that kind of time," Eleanor replied. "If we wait, he dies." Nathan's jaw tightened slightly. "And if you proceed without clearance, you hand the board exactly what they've been looking for." Sarah froze, her hand stilling on the IV line. She looked between them, sensing the shift in air. Eleanor finally turned to face Nathan. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. "I am not debating this." Nathan studied her for a long moment. He saw what others missed, the fatigue, yes, but also the unyielding certainty that made Eleanor Hartwell dangerous to anyone who valued control over outcomes. "I can't support this," he said quietly, "and I won't cover for it." "You don't have to," Eleanor replied. "Just step aside." Nathan did not argue further. He simply nodded once and stepped back, retreating to the glass wall. From there, he pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering briefly before he began typing. Eleanor turned back to the patient. "Prep the restricted antibiotics," she said. "I'll take responsibility." Sarah swallowed hard, then nodded. "On it." As the medication was administered, Daniel Reed's body convulsed briefly before settling. His breathing steadied, shallow but rhythmic. The fever broke in slow degrees, beads of sweat cooling against his skin. Eleanor stayed with him, monitoring every change, every number. Hours passed. The city outside remained soaked and silent. By the time the sun threatened to rise behind the clouds, Daniel Reed was alive. Barely, but alive. Eleanor washed her hands slowly at the sink, watching the water run red, then clear. Her reflection stared back at her, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. She did not hear Nathan approach. "That was reckless," he said. She dried her hands, then turned. "That was necessary." Nathan's expression hardened. "You think the board will see it that way?" "I don't care how they see it." Nathan exhaled, something close to frustration flickering across his features. "You always do this," he said. "You act as if you're immune to consequences." Eleanor looked at him steadily. "No," she said. "I act as if patients matter more." Nathan laughed softly without humor. "That's not how institutions survive." "And that's why institutions fail people," Eleanor replied. He studied her, then shook his head. "You've crossed a line this time, Ellie, and when this comes down, don't say you weren't warned." He walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hall. 2 hours later, Eleanor was summoned to administration. The conference room was warm, windowless, and smelled faintly of stale coffee. Margaret Doyle, the hospital's chief operations officer, sat at the head of the table. She was in her early 60s, sharp-featured, with short silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. Years of balancing budgets and bad press had carved caution into every line of her face. Beside her sat Thomas Avery, a compliance officer with the posture of a man who had never once raised his voice. Thin, bespectacled, impeccably dressed, he shuffled papers as if they were weapons. Nathan Crowley sat near the end of the table. "Dr. Hartwell," Margaret began, "do you understand why you're here?" "Yes," Eleanor said. "I authorized restricted medication without clearance." Thomas adjusted his glasses. "You exposed the hospital to significant liability." "I saved a life." Margaret's lips pressed together. "That may be your perspective." Nathan leaned forward slightly. "With respect," he said, "this pattern can't continue. Dr. Hartwell routinely bypasses protocols based on personal judgment. It undermines operational integrity." Eleanor turned her head slowly toward him. "You were there," she said. "You saw his condition." Nathan met her gaze evenly. "And I saw a risk the institution cannot absorb." The silence that followed was heavy. Margaret folded her hands. "Dr. Hartwell, effective immediately. You are placed on administrative suspension, pending formal review." The words landed without ceremony. Eleanor nodded once. "Understood." "You are to surrender your badge and clear your locker," Thomas added. "Security will escort you." Eleanor stood. There was no argument left to make. As she left the room, she felt something unexpected. Not devastation, but clarity. The system had made its choice. It always did. She walked back through the ER, past patients she had treated, nurses she had trained. Most avoided her eyes. Sarah did not. "This is wrong," Sarah whispered fiercely, gripping Eleanor's arm. "Everyone knows it." Eleanor placed a hand over hers. "Take care of him," she said, nodding toward Trauma Bay 3. "I will," Sarah promised. In the hallway, Daniel Reed stirred, his eyes opening briefly as Eleanor passed. Their gazes met. His fingers twitched, subtle but deliberate, brushing against the edge of the blanket. Something small and hard slipped into Eleanor's palm. She did not look down. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Eleanor stepped through the automatic doors with her bag over her shoulder, unaware that the ground beneath her feet was already shifting. That forces far beyond hospital walls had taken notice of her final act inside them. She believed she was walking into unemployment. She was wrong. Eleanor Hartwell did not go straight home. Leaving St. Bridget Medical Center felt unreal, as if the hospital had quietly expelled her without fully severing the connection. Her badge was gone, her locker empty, yet her body still moved with the muscle memory of long shifts, shoulders tight, steps measured, mind refusing to slow. Outside, Portland was wrapped in the same cold rain, the sky a dull slab of gray pressing low over the city. She walked 3 blocks before realizing she was soaking wet. Eleanor stopped beneath the awning of a closed cafe and finally opened her bag. Inside were the few things she had taken without thinking: her stethoscope, a folded cardigan, a small notebook she kept for patient follow-ups. She was never officially assigned. And then there was the object she had not yet allowed herself to examine. The item Daniel Reed had slipped into her hand was no larger than a house key. Wrapped in a square of medical gauze stained faintly with blood, it felt heavier than it should have. Eleanor unwrapped it slowly. A micro SD card rested in her palm, matte black, unmarked. Her stomach tightened. She did not panic. Panic wasted time. Instead, she stood still and thought. Daniel Reed had known exactly what he was doing. The deliberate eye contact, the timing, the choice of her, and not a nurse or a paramedic. He had trusted her with something that carried weight far beyond medicine. She rewrapped the card, slid it into the inner pocket of her bag, and resumed walking. Her apartment was a modest 1-bedroom on the east side of the city, tucked above a closed-down bookstore. The stairwell smelled of old paper and damp wood. Inside, the space was clean but sparsely furnished. Neutral walls, second-hand furniture, nothing sentimental on display. Eleanor had learned long ago not to anchor herself too firmly to places. She hung her coat, set her bag down, and made herself tea she did not drink. The silence pressed in. For the first time since leaving the hospital, the weight of what had happened settled fully in her chest. She had been suspended, possibly fired. Her career, carefully built over decades, had been dismantled in a single meeting. Still, she did not regret the choice. A knock came at the door. Eleanor frowned. It was nearly 3 a.m. No one she knew would come at this hour. She did not move immediately. Instead, she reached for the heavy ceramic mug on the counter, not as a weapon, but as reassurance that she was not entirely unarmed. The knock came again, firm, controlled, not impatient. She approached the door and looked through the peephole. 2 men stood in the narrow hallway. The first was tall, broad through the shoulders, wearing a dark rain jacket that did nothing to conceal the physical presence beneath it. He had a square jaw, a dense beard trimmed close, and pale eyes that scanned the space with practiced awareness, even as he waited. There was a scar cutting through his right eyebrow, faint but unmistakable. He stood with the ease of someone accustomed to danger, weight balanced, ready. The second man was older, leaner, with sharp features and hair cut short in a way that spoke of habit rather than fashion. His face carried the lines of prolonged stress rather than age, and his eyes, dark, observant, missed nothing. He wore civilian clothes that did not quite disguise military bearing. Eleanor's pulse slowed. She opened the door. "Yes?" she asked. "Dr. Eleanor Hartwell," the bearded man said. His voice was deep, calm, and unmistakably authoritative. "My name is Lucas Kane. This is Michael Torres. We'd like to speak with you." She studied them for a moment. "About what?" "About the man you treated tonight," Kane replied, "and about what he gave you." Eleanor stepped back without a word, allowing them inside. The apartment felt smaller with them in it. Kane took in the space quickly, eyes noting exits, corners, windows. Torres stood near the door, posture relaxed but attentive, hands visible, non-threatening. Lucas Kane removed his jacket. He was in his early 40s, Eleanor guessed. Broad, muscular, built like someone who had never stopped training. His beard showed flecks of gray, and the scar above his eyebrow gave his face a permanent look of intensity. When he moved, it was with the controlled precision of someone who had survived environments where hesitation killed. "We won't take much of your time," Kane said, "but we needed to reach you before someone else did." "Who?" Eleanor asked evenly. "Is someone else?" Torres answered this time. His voice was quieter, edged with fatigue. "People who don't knock." Eleanor nodded once. "Then you should talk." Kane met her gaze. "Daniel Reed wasn't his real name." "I assumed as much." "He's a former intelligence asset," Kane continued. "Deep cover, he'd been carrying evidence tied to a private defense contractor called Black Ridge Solutions. Embezzlement, weapons diversion, things that get people killed. And you believe he passed that evidence to me." "We know he did," Kane said. "What we don't know is whether anyone else saw it happen." Eleanor thought of Nathan Crowley's watchful eyes. "Someone may have suspected." Kane's expression darkened. "That's a problem." There was a brief silence. "You're military," Eleanor said finally. Kane did not correct her. "Was. And now?" "Now," he said. "I work with a unit that handles situations the government prefers not to acknowledge." Eleanor exhaled slowly. "Why me?" Kane's eyes held hers. Something shifted there, subtle but unmistakable. Recognition. "Because I've met you before," he said. The words landed like a distant echo. Torres glanced between them, surprised. "You didn't mention that." Kane ignored him. 8 years ago, northern British Columbia. A snowstorm, field clinic set up after a logging accident that wasn't an accident. Memory stirred, white, cold, blood on gloves. "You were running triage alone," Kane continued. "No backup, no heat. You kept people alive long enough for extraction." Eleanor remembered a man with blue eyes and a broken leg who refused morphine so others could have it. "You don't remember me," Kane said. "I remember the night," she replied. "That's enough." Another knock sounded at the door. This one was different, louder, urgent. Kane's body shifted instantly, placing himself between Eleanor and the door. Torres drew closer, eyes narrowed. "Police?" Eleanor asked. Kane shook his head. "No." The knock came again, followed by a voice. "Ms. Hartwell, this is Detective Robert Hale, Portland Police Bureau. We need to ask you a few questions." Eleanor frowned. I haven't done anything illegal." "Not officially," Torres murmured. Kane leaned closer. "They're not here about your hospital decision." "How do you know?" "Because this is too fast." The doorknob turned. Kane moved. In a blur of controlled motion, he opened the door just enough to block the view inside. Detective Hale stood there, a thick-set man in his late 40s, with thinning hair, a tired face, and a rain-darkened coat. His eyes flicked past Kane's shoulder, sharp and curious. "Can I help you?" Kane asked calmly. Hale frowned. "This is a police matter." "So is obstruction," Kane replied, flashing a badge Eleanor had not seen him pull out. "Federal, unfamiliar." Hale hesitated. The moment stretched, then he stepped back. "We'll be in touch." When the door closed, the apartment fell silent again. Torres let out a breath. They're closing in." Eleanor felt the full weight of the night settle at last. "What happens now?" Kane looked at her steadily. "Now you decide whether you want to stay ahead of this or be crushed by it." And my choice is? Come with us, he said, at least until this plays out. Eleanor glanced at her bag, at the pocket holding the card, at the stethoscope she had not yet removed from habit. Outside, the rain showed no sign of stopping. She straightened. Give me 5 minutes. Kane nodded. That's all we need. Eleanor Hartwell locked the door to her apartment and did not look back. The hallway light flickered as she descended the narrow stairs, her footsteps quiet, deliberate. She carried only a small overnight bag, clothes, toiletries, her stethoscope folded carefully into its side pocket. Everything else she owned remained behind. Furniture could be replaced, books could be rebought, time, once lost, could not. Outside, Portland's rain had thinned into a fine mist, the kind that soaked without warning. A black SUV idled at the curb, engine running low, lights off. It was unmarked, clean, but not new, the kind of vehicle designed to pass unnoticed. Michael Torres stood beside it, scanning the street with practiced patience. Under the dim glow of a street lamp, his lean face looked sharper, almost severe, or the faint scar along his jaw more visible than it had been inside. No one followed, he said quietly as Eleanor approached. Lucas Kane opened the rear door for her. Up close, his presence felt solid, immovable. He wore a dark sweater now, instead of tactical gear, but nothing about him softened. His beard framed his face like armor, his eyes alert even in stillness. There was an old weariness in them, the kind earned rather than aged into. Seatbelt, he said as she climbed in. Not unkindly, habitually. The SUV pulled away from the curb without urgency, slipping into the quiet streets as if it belonged there. Portland blurred past the windows, wet pavement, closed storefronts, a sleeping city unaware that one of its citizens had just stepped off the grid. They drove for nearly an hour without conversation. Eleanor used the time to observe. The interior of the vehicle was utilitarian but clean, no clutter, no personal items. A faint smell of leather and gun oil lingered, familiar enough to stir old memories she did not yet allow herself to examine. Kane sat beside her, one arm resting loosely against the door, posture relaxed but ready. Torres drove, eyes never lingering too long on any mirror. "Where are we going?" Eleanor asked finally. "South," Kane replied, then east. That's not an answer. He allowed himself the slightest smile. It's the only one that matters right now. The city thinned into industrial outskirts, then forest. Tall firs closed in on either side of the road, their dark silhouettes towering, indifferent. The mist turned heavier, fog curling low across the asphalt. Torres turned off the main highway onto a narrow service road with no visible signage. "Oh, this isn't legal," Eleanor noted calmly. "No," Kane agreed, "but it's necessary." After another 15 minutes, the SUV slowed and pulled through a rusted gate that looked permanently abandoned. Beyond it lay a long gravel road leading into the trees. At its end, lights glowed faintly through the fog. The compound was smaller than Eleanor expected. A cluster of low buildings, steel and concrete, designed for function rather than comfort. No flags, no insignia, just quiet efficiency. A perimeter fence hummed softly with power. As they stepped out of the vehicle, Eleanor noticed movement. Men and women in dark clothing moved with purpose between buildings, their steps synchronized without being rigid. They did not stare, but they noticed her. She could feel it. "This is one of our safe facilities," Kane said. Temporary." "Temporary for what?" "For people who are about to become inconvenient," Torres replied. Inside the main building, the air was warm and dry. The lighting was soft, deliberately non-clinical. Eleanor's eyes adjusted quickly. A man approached them from down the corridor. He was tall, lean, and broad through the chest, with close-cropped blonde hair and a clean-shaven face marked by a faint burn scar along his neck. His movements were precise, economical. He looked like someone who had once been larger and had refined himself down to what was strictly necessary. "Commander," he said, nodding to Kane. "We weren't expecting company." "This is Dr. Eleanor Hartwell," Kane replied. "She's with us." The man studied her for a moment, not rudely, but thoroughly. "Ethan Cole," he said. "Welcome." There was something guarded in his tone, in a reserve shaped by loss. Later, Eleanor would learn that Cole had lost 2 men under his command to bad intelligence, an error traced back to Blackridge Solutions. It had made him meticulous to the point of obsession. They led Eleanor into a smaller room, furnished simply with a table, 2 chairs, and a wall-mounted screen. Kane gestured for her to sit. "You should know what you're stepping into," he said. Torres connected a drive to the screen. Images appeared, documents, financial records, satellite photos. Names scrolled past, shell companies, arms shipments rerouted, civilian casualties listed as collateral damage. "Black Ridge Solutions," Kane said. "Private defense contractor, publicly legitimate, privately corrupt." "And Daniel Reed?" Eleanor asked. "Was trying to dismantle them from the inside," Kane said. "He knew he was dying. He needed someone he could trust." Eleanor felt the weight of the SD card in her bag, as if it were burning through the fabric. "And you think I'm safe here?" "No," Kane said honestly. "I think you're safer than anywhere else." Silence settled. "You said you remembered me," Eleanor said finally. "From Canada." Kane nodded. "You set my leg in a blizzard with a headlamp and duct tape. Told me if I passed out, you'd break my nose to wake me up." She almost smiled. "You didn't pass out." "No," he said. "I listened." A door opened behind them. A woman entered, her presence commanding immediate attention. She was in her late 40s, dark-skinned, with short silver hair cut close to her scalp. Her posture was military, her expression calm but severe. A thin scar ran from her left temple to her cheekbone. "Lucas," she said, "we need to move the timetable." "This is Dr. Hartwell," Kane said. "Ellie, this is Commander Renee Walsh." Walsh studied Eleanor with sharp, assessing eyes. "You caused quite a ripple," she said, not unkindly. "Black Ridge has already dispatched assets to Portland." "I didn't intend," Walsh raised a hand. "Intent is irrelevant. Impact isn't." She turned to Kane. "We extracted Dawn." Kane nodded. "Understood." Walsh looked back at Eleanor. "You're not military," she said. "You didn't sign up for this." "No," Eleanor agreed, "but I'm already in it." Walsh's lips curved slightly. "Good. Then you'll want to rest." They escorted Eleanor to a small private room, clean, secure, a single bed, a desk, a small window that looked out onto nothing but trees. As the door closed behind her, Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, her hands resting on her knees. For the first time that night, she allowed herself to feel the full gravity of her situation. She was no longer just a doctor who had broken protocol. She was evidence. Outside, the compound hummed quietly, preparing for movement. Men and women checked gear, reviewed plans, spoke in low voices shaped by trust and necessity. Somewhere in the forest, the road disappeared into darkness, unmarked, unrecorded. Eleanor lay back and closed her eyes. She did not know where that road would take her, but she knew she would not be walking it alone. Dawn did not arrive at the compound with color. It came as a thinning of darkness, a quiet loosening of the fog that had wrapped the trees through the night. Eleanor Hartwell woke before the lights changed, her body tuned to hospital rhythms that no longer applied but refused to fade. The room was still. No alarms, no intercoms, only the faint vibration of generators and the distant thud of boots on concrete. She dressed quickly, choosing the practical clothes laid out for her. Dark pants, a thermal layer, a jacket with too many pockets to be accidental. Her stethoscope went around her neck by reflex. When she stepped into the corridor, she found the compound already in motion. Men moved with the efficiency of people who had rehearsed the same morning hundreds of times. No one hurried. No one wasted steps. Eleanor noticed the difference immediately. Hospitals looked busy. This place looked prepared. Lucas Kane stood near the operations room, speaking quietly with Commander Renee Walsh. Kane's posture was relaxed, but his eyes were sharp, tracking movement and timing. Walsh listened with her arms crossed, the faint scar along her cheek catching the overhead light. She noticed Eleanor at once. "You're early?" Walsh said. "I usually am," Eleanor replied. Walsh nodded, approving without comment. "We have a situation," she said, turning toward the operations room. "Low profile, time sensitive. You're coming." Kane studied Eleanor's face. "You don't have to." "I do," Eleanor said. "If I'm going to be here, I won't be ornamental." A corner of Kane's mouth lifted. "Fair enough." Inside the operations room, a large screen displayed a satellite image of a rural stretch of highway east of the compound. Torres stood at the console, his lean frame angled toward the display, fingers moving quickly. Ethan Cole leaned against the wall, arms folded, his gaze fixed on a blinking marker. "Vehicle ambush," Torres said. "Private security convoy. Black Ridge branding scrubbed, but the pattern matches. One survivor." "Who?" Eleanor asked. "A driver," Walsh said. "Civilian contractor. Took a round to the thigh and shrapnel to the chest. He crawled far enough to trigger a distress beacon. Local EMS won't reach him in time." Eleanor looked at the image. Forest, distance, cold. "He'll bleed out," she said. "Unless we get there first," Kane replied. They moved fast. Eleanor was issued a compact medical pack, lighter than what she was used to, stripped to essentials. As they stepped outside, she noticed a dog sitting alert near the transport vehicles, medium-sized, lean, with a sable coat and intelligent amber eyes. Its ears flicked toward every sound. "That's Ranger," Kane said, following her gaze. 6 years old, Belgian Malinois. He's better at his job than most people. Ranger rose smoothly and approached Eleanor, sniffed once, then sat, calm and observant. "He likes you," Kane said. "That's rare?" "I've been told animals are good judges of character," Eleanor replied, kneeling briefly to scratch the dog's neck. Ranger's tail moved once, controlled, then stilled. The ride out was rough. The road dissolved into mud and gravel, the transport bouncing as Torres navigated with practiced ease. Eleanor braced herself and focused on breathing, grounding her thoughts. When they stopped, the forest pressed in close, damp and silent. They found the vehicle partially off the road, its front end crushed against a tree. The driver lay several yards away, propped against a log, pale and shaking. He was younger than Eleanor expected, mid-30s, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and a short beard matted with blood. His eyes were wide, unfocused, the look of a man holding himself together by will alone. Eleanor was out of the vehicle before Kane could speak. "Sir," she said, kneeling, "I'm a doctor. Can you hear me?" He nodded weakly. "Name's Mark," he whispered. They left me." "I know," Eleanor said. "We're here now." She assessed quickly. Gunshot wound through the thigh, arterial bleed slowed by pressure but not controlled, shrapnel embedded near the right lung, breathing shallow, skin clammy. "Kane," she said without looking up. "I need pressure here, hard, don't stop." He complied instantly, his large hands steady. "Torres," she continued. "Chest kit, now." Torres was already there. Eleanor worked with calm precision, her movements economical, decisive. The forest faded, the mission faded. There was only the body in front of her and the math of survival. Ranger stood close, alert but still, eyes scanning the tree line. A crack echoed through the woods. Gunfire. Walsh's voice came sharp over comms. "Contact! 2 o'clock!" Kane did not move his hands. "Ellie." "I know," Eleanor said. "Keep pressure." She finished sealing the chest wound as bullets snapped through branches overhead. The team returned fire with controlled bursts, measured, lethal. Eleanor felt the tremor of fear rise, acknowledged it, set it aside. Fear could wait. "Mark," she said, "stay with me." His eyes fluttered. "Am I dying?" "Not today," she said. "You don't get that luxury." She clamped the artery, secured the dressing, and signaled Kane. "We can move him." They lifted together, coordinated without rehearsal, and carried the man back to the transport as the team covered their retreat. The firefight ended as quickly as it began. Whoever had come looking retreated when they realized they were outmatched. Inside the vehicle, Eleanor worked through the bounce and noise, stabilizing Mark with the tools she had. When they reached the compound, he was alive. Barely, but alive. Later, in the quiet that followed, Eleanor washed her hands at a small sink, the water running cold and clear. Kane stood nearby, silent. "You didn't hesitate," he said finally. "Neither did you," Eleanor replied. "That wasn't the test," Kane said. "This was." Walsh appeared in the doorway. "Black Ridge will know we intervened," she said. "They'll escalate." Eleanor dried her hands and met her gaze. "Then so will we." Walsh studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Welcome to the reality," she said. "You passed." Eleanor felt no triumph, only resolve. That night, As she lay in the small room again, she understood the shape of what she had become. Not a passenger, not a liability, a necessary piece. Outside, Ranger lay at the threshold, guarding the door, amber eyes open and watchful. The compound did not celebrate victories. There was no congratulatory noise after the driver was stabilized, no release of tension beyond the quiet efficiency of people returning to routine. Eleanor noticed it immediately. In hospitals, survival was followed by relief, sometimes even smiles. Here, survival merely reset the clock. She stood in the medical bay, scrubbing her hands at the stainless sink, the water warm against skin still faintly trembling from adrenaline. The driver, Mark, lay sedated behind her, chest rising evenly, monitors stable. He would live. That fact should have felt definitive. Instead, it felt provisional. Lucas Kane leaned against the doorway, arms folded, his broad frame filling the space without blocking it. He had removed his jacket. The dark fabric of his shirt clung slightly to his shoulders, a damp from mist and sweat. His beard was rougher than usual, stubble creeping back in, a sign he had not slept. "You did good work," he said. Eleanor shut off the water and dried her hands. "I did my job." Kane watched her carefully. "You did it under fire. Not everyone can." "I wasn't thinking about the fire," she replied. "I was thinking about his airway." Kane nodded once. He understood that answer. It was one of the reasons he trusted her. Down the corridor, voices rose briefly, then settled. Eleanor stepped past Kane and followed the sound to the operations room. The screen was alive with data. Michael Torres stood at the console again, posture tense. His usually calm expression was sharpened, jaw set. Beside him was a woman Eleanor had not seen before, tall, narrow-shouldered, with straight black hair cut bluntly at her jawline. Her skin was olive-toned, her face angular, almost severe, softened only by tired eyes behind rectangular glasses. "This is Dr. Lena Morano," Kane said as Eleanor entered, "our intelligence analyst." Morano gave Eleanor a brief nod, not unkind, but distant. She wore civilian clothes, dark slacks, a sweater, but her bearing suggested long familiarity with pressure, the kind of person who lived in information rather than action. "Blackridge didn't expect us to intervene so fast," Morano said, her voice low, precise. They adjusted. The screen shifted to show satellite images of Portland. Eleanor felt a tightening in her chest. "That's my city," she said. "Yes," Morano replied. "And your hospital?" Eleanor stepped closer. The image zoomed in on St. Bridget Medical Center. A timestamp blinked in the corner, hours earlier. "What am I looking at?" Eleanor asked. "Containment," Morano said. "Blackridge assets posing as federal contractors entered administrative offices at your hospital shortly after you left. They weren't looking for patients. They were looking for me," Eleanor said quietly. "They were looking for the card," Morano corrected. "You were a variable." Kane's expression hardened. "They won't find it." "No," Morano agreed, "but they found something else." The image changed again. A still photograph appeared, grainy, pulled from security footage. It showed Dr. Nathan Crowley speaking with two men in dark suits near the hospital's rear entrance. One of the men was tall, lean, with close-cropped blonde hair and a sharp nose. The other was broader, darker-skinned, his head shaved, his posture unmistakably military. Eleanor felt the shift immediately. The betrayal had a temperature. "Nathan?" she said. "Yes," Morano replied. "He made contact within 30 minutes of your suspension." Kane exhaled slowly. "What's his angle?" Morano tapped the screen, bringing up a file. Career stagnation, financial stress, ego. He believed cooperation would protect him and elevate his position. He underestimated how disposable he was. Eleanor did not speak. She stared at the image, remembering Nathan's careful smile, his warnings disguised as concern. Walsh entered the room, her presence commanding silence without effort. "They've escalated," she said, "which means we do too." She turned to Eleanor. "This is where things change." Eleanor met her gaze. "They already have." Walsh studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You understand what's at stake now." "I understand I can't go back," Eleanor said. No," Walsh replied. "You can't." Morano cleared her throat. "There's more." She brought up a new file. Names, dates, transactions. Black Ridge isn't just diverting weapons, Morano said. They're experimenting, field testing medical suppression agents in conflict zones, infections engineered to overwhelm standard treatment. Eleanor's breath caught. That's impossible. It's illegal, Morano corrected. Not impossible. Images followed. Civilians, clinics, places Eleanor recognized from her past, names of regions she had volunteered in, scars reopening in memory. They're creating problems only they can solve, Kane said quietly, and selling the solution. Eleanor felt something cold settle into place inside her. Daniel Reed knew, she said. Yes, Morano replied, and he knew you'd recognize the pattern. Silence stretched. Yves Walsh broke it. We're moving the evidence to international oversight, but until that happens, Black Ridge will try to erase every loose end. And I'm one of them, Eleanor said. You're the most important one, Kane said. Later, Eleanor returned to the medical bay. Ranger lay near the door again, his lean body stretched but alert. He lifted his head as she entered, amber eyes following her calmly. She knelt beside him, resting a hand against his warm flank. The steady presence grounded her. A man lay in the adjacent bed, recently brought in. Eleanor glanced at the chart. Caleb Finch, mid-40s. Former Black Ridge logistics officer, defected, beaten badly for it. She approached him. Caleb was tall but gaunt, his face bruised, a split lip swelling unevenly. A dark beard shadowed sharp cheekbones, and his eyes, green, and wary, tracked her movement with distrust born of experience. His hands bore old fractures that had healed poorly. You're safe, Eleanor said gently. Caleb laughed weakly. No one's safe. Maybe not, Eleanor replied. But you're alive. He studied her. You're not one of them. No, she said. I'm a doctor. He nodded slowly. That's worse. You notice things. She did not deny it. Hours later, Eleanor sat alone in the small room assigned to her, the SD card placed on the desk in front of her. She turned it between her fingers, the weight of it no longer abstract. She thought of the hospital, of Sarah, of the patients who would never know why she disappeared. She thought of the line she had crossed, not when she left Portland, not when she treated Mark under fire, but now. Knowing what she knew, there was no unlearning it. A soft knock came at the door. Kane entered, closing it behind him. He looked tired now, the edge of command softened by something closer to concern. You okay? He asked. Eleanor nodded. I will be. That's not what I asked. She met his gaze. I won't walk away. Kane studied her, then gave a single nod. Good, because Black Ridge just put a price on your head. She exhaled slowly. Then we're on a clock. Yes, he said. And there's no stepping back over this line. Eleanor looked at the card one last time, then slid it into a secure case Morano had given her. I crossed it the moment I chose a patient over permission, she said. Kane's expression shifted, respect unmistakable. Outside, the forest stood silent, indifferent to human decisions. Inside the compound, plans were already forming, pieces moving into place. Eleanor lay back on the bed, fully awake. Tomorrow, the truth would begin to cost lives, and she was ready to pay her part. The first sign that Black Ridge had moved came without drama. No alarms, no gunfire, just a subtle disruption in the compound's rhythm, an interruption Eleanor felt before she understood it. She was in the medical bay reviewing Mark's labs when Ranger lifted his head, ears angling toward the ceiling, body tensing in a way that was too controlled to be instinct alone. The dog did not bark. He stood. Eleanor straightened. Experience had taught her to trust silence more than noise. Across the corridor, Lucas Kane paused mid-conversation, eyes narrowing as if he'd heard the same unspoken warning. He tapped his earpiece once. Torres. Signal degradation, Torres replied immediately, voice tight. Not full blackout. Someone's testing our perimeter. Commander Renee Walsh appeared at the far end of the hall, already moving. Lock internal doors, she ordered. Stage 1. The compound responded like a living organism. Doors slid shut with muted thuds. Lights dimmed by a fraction. The hum of generators deepened. Eleanor felt it in her bones, the way pressure changes before a storm. Dr. Lena Morano's voice cut in over the internal comms. They're probing with drones, low altitude, passive sensors. They want confirmation before committing. They'll get it, Kane said, but not the way they expect. Walsh turned to Eleanor. You stay here. Eleanor met her gaze steadily. If they breach, this becomes a casualty point. Walsh studied her for a beat, then nodded. Then you're with Cole. Ethan Cole was already there, securing medical supplies into hard cases with precise movements. Up close, Eleanor noticed the faint tremor in his left hand, barely perceptible. Controlled through will alone, old nerve damage likely, the cost of surviving. They won't come loud, Cole said without looking up. Blackridge likes deniability. As if summoned by the words, the power flickered. Then the perimeter alarm sounded, brief, sharp, immediately silenced. They're in, Torres said. South fence, 2 teams, professional. Kane's voice was calm. Positions. The next minutes unfolded with brutal efficiency. Gunfire cracked outside, short controlled bursts swallowed by the forest. The sound was distant, but the intent was close. Eleanor guided Mark's bed deeper into the bay, securing lines, her hands steady. Nearby, Caleb Finch stirred, eyes wide with recognition. They came for me, he rasped. They came for all of us, Eleanor replied. Lie still. A concussion rattled the walls. Dust sifted from the ceiling. Ranger pressed closer to Eleanor's leg, a solid, warm presence. Then the door blew inward. 2 men flooded the bay, moving fast, weapons raised. They wore civilian tactical gear, dark, unmarked, faces obscured by masks. The first was tall and angular, beard thick and dark beneath the fabric, movements aggressive, impatient. The second was broader, stockier, with a shaved head and eyes that scanned for targets rather than threats. Ethan Cole moved first. He fired once, twice, precise shots that dropped the second man instantly. The first dove aside, returning fire. Eleanor felt the air tear past her shoulder, close enough to burn. Down, Cole barked. Eleanor ducked behind the bed, shielding Mark with her body as instinct overrode fear. Ranger lunged, a blur of muscle and teeth, slamming into the attacker's arm. The man screamed, weapon clattering away. Cole closed the distance and ended it. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with gunpowder and breath. Eleanor rose slowly, heart pounding, but hands steady. She checked Mark. Alive. She checked Caleb, shaken but conscious. Kane appeared in the doorway moments later, blood spattered across his sleeve, expression grim. We're compromised, he said. Partial breach only. They didn't expect resistance like this. Walsh's voice came through comms. 2 down, 1 escaped. He'll report. That's fine, Kane said. Let them know. Outside, the forest absorbed the chaos without comment. Within the compound, the cost was counted quietly. 1 operator wounded, non-fatal. Systems damaged, repairable. But Blackridge had crossed a line. In the operations room, Morano worked rapidly, eyes flicking across screens. They weren't here to destroy, she said. They were here to extract. Who? Walsh asked. Morano didn't hesitate. Nathan Crowley. Eleanor felt the words like a physical blow. He's here? Kane asked. Was, Morano corrected. He provided them with internal layouts. In exchange, they promised him immunity. And, Eleanor asked quietly. Morano's mouth tightened. Blackridge doesn't keep promises. Security footage filled the screen. Nathan Crowley appeared briefly, being escorted through the trees by armed men. His posture was rigid, his face pale. He said something, pleading perhaps. Then the feed cut. He thought he was valuable, Kane said. He was wrong. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. She did not feel triumph, only a deep, cold sadness. Nathan had chosen ambition over conscience and discovered too late that neither side respected weakness. Walsh turned to Eleanor. We're moving tonight. Where? Eleanor asked. Somewhere Blackridge can't follow easily, Walsh replied, and somewhere your skills matter even more. The transport was ready within the hour, a larger aircraft this time, matte black, engines low and hungry. The wounded were loaded first. Eleanor supervised every step, her calm anchoring the chaos. As she climbed aboard, Kane fell into step beside her. His face bore a fresh cut along the cheek, blood drying dark against his beard. You okay? She asked. He nodded. I will be. She met his eyes. "That's not what I asked." He exhaled, a rare crack in the armor. "I'm still standing." "That counts," she said. Inside the aircraft, Eleanor secured Mark and Caleb, adjusting monitors as the engine spooled. Ranger lay at her feet, head resting on his paws, eyes alert. Morano approached, holding a tablet. "We decrypted the last segment," she said. "The SD card wasn't just evidence. It was a trigger." "A trigger for what?" Eleanor asked. "For exposure," Morano replied. "Once activated, it releases data to multiple watchdog networks simultaneously. Black Ridge has 48 hours before everything goes public." Kane smiled without humor. "That explains the panic." Walsh addressed the cabin. "We're not running," she said. "We're repositioning." The aircraft lifted, the compound shrinking beneath them until it vanished into the trees. Eleanor watched until it disappeared entirely. She thought of Portland, of the hospital, of the line she could never step back over. As the plane leveled, Kane sat across from her. "You could have walked away," he said. Eleanor shook her head. "Not after tonight." "Good," he replied. "Because they'll come harder next time." She met his gaze steadily. "Then we'll be ready?" Ranger shifted, pressing closer to her leg as if in agreement. Outside, dawn began to edge into the sky, pale and unforgiving. The hunters had revealed themselves, and Eleanor Hartwell was no longer prey. The aircraft did not land where maps were honest. It descended through a ceiling of pale cloud and touched down on a narrow strip carved into high desert, the horizon wide and bare, the light clean and unforgiving. The air was dry, carrying the faint smell of sage and dust. Eleanor Hartwell felt it the moment the hatch opened, the difference between places that remembered violence and places that allowed recovery. The facility was small, almost modest by comparison to the compound they had left behind. Low buildings of stone and steel, half buried into the earth for insulation, arranged around a central courtyard where a single cottonwood tree cast a thin, patient shadow. This place did not hide from the world. It simply did not announce itself. They moved with practiced quiet. Mark and Caleb were transferred first, their vitals stable. Their faces softer now, that immediate danger had passed. Eleanor supervised every step, her voice steady, reassuring without pretense. The medical wing was spare but impeccably designed, natural light, uncluttered surfaces, equipment chosen for function rather than display. "This is where we finish things," Commander Renee Walsh said beside her. Walsh looked worn, the lines around her eyes deeper than before, but there was a looseness in her shoulders Eleanor had not seen until now. "And where we let the noise die." Dr. Lena Morano stood near the window, tablet in hand, dark hair tucked behind her ears. "The dead man's switch is armed," she said. 48 hours, unless we intervene." "We won't," Kane replied from the doorway. He had changed into clean clothes, but the cut on his cheek remained, stitched neatly, a reminder of cost. Yes, his beard had been trimmed back to regulation short, revealing the angles of his face, strong, weathered, unsoftened by vanity. He looked at Eleanor. "We let it go." They gathered in the operations room as the sun dipped low. Morano projected the final sequence, secure uploads scheduled across multiple international watchdogs, legal consortia, medical ethics boards, and investigative outlets. Redundancy layered over redundancy, the kind of transparency that could not be negotiated away. "Black Ridge has already started hemorrhaging contracts," Morano said. "Executives are disappearing, not fleeing, disappearing." "Good," Walsh said. "Let the system do what it pretends to do." Eleanor listened, absorbing, but her attention kept returning to the patients, to Mark's steady breathing, to Caleb's cautious calm, to the knowledge that the end of one battle did not end the need for care. As night fell, Eleanor stepped outside into the courtyard. The cottonwood leaves whispered softly. Ranger lay near the doorway, his lean body relaxed for the first time since Portland, amber eyes half-lidded but alert. He was older up close than he appeared in motion, graying along the muzzle, scars beneath the fur that spoke of service without complaint. "You earned this place," she murmured, resting a hand against his neck. Ranger's tail moved once, slow and content. Footsteps approached. Kane joined her, standing at a respectful distance. The desert night cooled quickly, stars emerging in sharp clarity. "You could still leave," he said quietly. "When this is over." Eleanor considered the question without urgency. I already did, she said. I left the life I couldn't continue. I didn't leave myself. Kane nodded. Walsh is putting together something permanent, a medical arm that doesn't answer to contractors or politics. We'd operate where systems fail, quietly. And you want me to lead it, Eleanor said. Yes. She studied him. For the first time, she allowed herself to see the man beyond the role. The way he stood, slightly angled toward danger, habit ingrained. The way his voice softened around wounded people, the way he listened. What happened to you, she asked, to make you trust a doctor you met once in a snowstorm? Kane exhaled, slow. I lost men, he said. Good ones, because someone higher up decided numbers mattered more than people. When you set my leg, you didn't ask who I was or what it cost. You asked if it hurt and how long you had. It's that changes a person. Eleanor nodded. She understood that kind of change. Inside, the final countdown ticked away. At dawn, the release triggered. It did not arrive as an explosion, but as a series of quiet confirmations. Messages, secure acknowledgments, then headlines. Investigations announced, arrest warrants filed. Clinics once starved of resources suddenly flooded with aid. Not charity, but restitution. Black Ridge collapsed under the weight of its own secrets. Eleanor watched the news feeds briefly, then turned them off. She had no interest in spectacle. There were rounds to make. Mark woke that morning, lucid and pain-managed. He managed a weak smile. You're not what I expected, he said. Neither is surviving, Eleanor replied. But you're doing it. Caleb Finch asked to sit up. His green eyes were clearer now, less hunted. Yes, they'll come after me, he said. Not here, Eleanor replied, and not alone. Later, a small ceremony took place beneath the cottonwood. No flags, no ranks. Just people standing together in the shade. Walsh spoke briefly, then stepped aside. This is Dr. Eleanor Hartwell, she said. She will serve as chief medical officer for our operations. If you're breathing, she's the reason. There was no applause, just nods, respect without noise. Eleanor felt something unfamiliar settle into place. Not pride, belonging. Weeks passed. The facility grew busier, but not louder. Patients arrived from places where help had failed to arrive in time before. Eleanor built protocols that bent without breaking, trained medics to think rather than follow, insisted on care that treated dignity as non-negotiable. One afternoon, Sarah Kim arrived. As she stood awkwardly at the entrance, copper hair pulled back, eyes bright and tired. I took a leave, she said. Couldn't stand the hospital after you were gone. Eleanor embraced her. You didn't have to come. I know, Sarah said. I wanted to. The desert softened into evening. Kane and Eleanor sat on the low wall beneath the cottonwood. Ranger stretched between them, asleep. You're home, Kane said. Eleanor considered the word, then nodded. Yes, she said. I am. In the distance, the horizon glowed, quiet and vast. There were still wounds in the world. There always would be. But there was also this place, where people were not numbers, where healing was allowed to finish. Eleanor Hartwell had crossed a line she could not step back over. On the other side, she found a place where wounds closed and stayed closed. And that was enough. Sometimes God doesn't send angels with wings. Sometimes he sends tired hands, steady hearts, and ordinary people who refuse to walk away. Eleanor thought she had lost everything, her job, her safety, her place in the world. But what she lost was only the life that no longer fit her purpose. What she found was a calling. Because miracles are rarely loud. They don't arrive with thunder or flashing lights. They arrive quietly, in hospital hallways, in the rain, in the moment you choose compassion when no one is watching. If you're watching this and feeling forgotten, if you've been doing the right thing and wondering why it hurts so much, remember this. God sees the unseen, and he never wastes a single act of kindness. In everyday life, we may not save lives on a battlefield or face armed men in the dark, but every day, we are given the same choice Eleanor faced, to choose love over convenience, to choose courage over comfort, to be the miracle someone else prayed for. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment below and tell us what part spoke to you. Your words may be the encouragement someone else is waiting for. And if you believe in stories that heal, inspire, and remind us that goodness still matters, subscribe to the channel and stay with us. May God bless you, protect you, and guide your steps. May He bring peace to your home, strength to your heart, and light to your darkest moments. And may you never forget, even the quietest life can be part of God's greatest miracles. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.